Wow, that was very quick. We're going to start, everybody. Hello. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third webinar in the Creating Communities of Welcome series. Today, we will discuss sponsorship process step by step. So this is a follow-up to our Community Sponsorship 101. And this webinar will offer a more in-depth information for sponsorship groups, the application process, matching sponsors and newcomers, and the legal and financial commitments. Just a reminder that you can find recordings of the past webinars in this series on the welcome.us YouTube page already. Now we have some housekeeping rules for those who haven't attended the previous webinars. Today's webinar is being recorded. You probably had to click on the button to see to that, so you understand that. The chat is disabled. We have at this point close to 150 people, and as with most webinars, chat in that bigger group is a little bit unruly. So you can still submit a question though if you hit the Q&A button. So if you go to the Q&A button and you hear something, and try to do that throughout the webinar. Don't wait until the end if I ask for questions. If something comes to you and you haven't heard the speaker answer that question, go ahead and write into the Q&A your question and submit it, and then we'll bring that up at the end of the webinar. And to keep the event a safe and a supportive environment for all participants, we will remove any attendees who engage in any form of harassment, any offensive, discriminatory, or threatening speech or behavior. So those are the ground rules. But once again, thank you, because I know you're here for a very good reason. Let me introduce myself. I'm Andrij Dobriansky. I represent the Ukrainian Congress Committee of America, as well as a whole host of other Ukrainian organizations. As you can see, we've been doing work in this country trying to unite as many Ukrainian American groups since 1940. Why 1940? Well, because of something that's very personal to me, and that is in 1939, Ukraine began to be bombed by both the Nazi forces and the Russian infantry rushing in. That was on the day of my father's 9th birthday. And so for me, it's very touching to work on this process with Welcome.us, with all of our partners, because I am a proud son of an immigrant that happened to finish his high school education in a displaced persons camp, and only through the goodwill of an American commanding officer thought well enough of him to tell him you should apply for a scholarship to the United States. I'm also the proud grandson of a butcher who was able to come to the United States because of a law called the Displaced Persons Act of 1948. There's so many great things that this country has done to help people in a time of need. And this process right now, we hope will be able to edify you. We hope that today's seminar specifically will give more information for those of you who are trying to help people in need, specifically on the program that's aimed towards the people of Ukraine. So today with me, we have several wonderful speakers. First and foremost, we are going to be joined by Denise Bell, who's the Partnerships Director at Welcome.us. She'll be speaking first. We also have Olga Khomyak, an immigration attorney and a member of the Ukraine Immigration Task Force. We will also be joined by the Vice President of Operations and Strategy at Welcome.us, Rachel Quint. And finally, we will have Deb Stein, the Senior Liaison of Strategic Partnerships of the Community Sponsorship Hub. We hope this is a really good discussion. And again, if something comes to you, we'd like for you to enter it in the Q&A when it comes to your mind. Don't worry about forgetting it later. Enter the question, and hopefully we'll have as much time as possible for Q&A at the end. With that, I'm going to bring up Denise and have a conversation with her first. Denise, can you please tell us what is Uniting for Ukraine, and how is Welcome.us involved in supporting this initiative?
Thank you so much for this question, and it's really an honor to be here again. And so Uniting for Ukraine, President Biden opened this program on April 25th, and it was announced on April 21st, excuse me. And the program allows the admittance of at least 100,000 Ukrainians to the United States with the support of a sponsor. And I do want to stop right here to say there are going to be many questions, as there should be, but if people go to ukraine.welcome.us, a lot of the details are going to be there, like Do you have to be in Ukraine to apply for Uniting for Ukraine? Can you be in another country who is eligible? The most important part to understand in the bigger picture is that the administration opened this program on April 25th for Americans anywhere in the country to sponsor any Ukrainian who is eligible, with a threshold of 100,000 people able to come. So these are 100,000 Ukrainians seeking refuge, have an accelerated pathway to get to the United States. As of July 1st, nearly 70,000 Americans have submitted applications to the US government to sponsor. Nearly 19,000 Ukrainians have arrived, and nearly 45,000 sponsored Ukrainians have been authorized to travel. Uniting for Ukraine is a US government-run program. Welcome.us is an independent, nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that seeks to make Americans across the country aware of this opportunity to be involved and sponsor. And so we were started in September 2021, and I'm very honored to be a co-founder of Welcome.us. And we were started in response to the Afghan evacuation and to ensure that Americans could be involved in welcoming Afghan newcomers. Our mission is simple, direct, and powerful: to inspire and empower people from across divides to unite in common purpose and welcome newcomers, meet their essential needs, and help them thrive. We are very fortunate to have 4 former presidents and their first ladies be our honorary co-chairs. We work in formal partnership with the US government and resettlement agencies, as well as other institutional partners, to identify needs and coordinate solutions. We work with diverse organizations, companies, and the American people to create what we call on-ramps for participation and to build innovative solutions to meet needs, such as Welcome Connect, which we'll have a demonstration of shortly. And then we tell the stories of Americans from all walks of life who are stepping up to help, so other people are inspired to do the same. As I like to say, what we saw with the Afghan response and what we are seeing now with the Ukrainian response is a cross-sector, cross-faith, cross-diaspora, cross-country response, a whole of country response, where people are stepping up to say, I want to sponsor a Ukrainian. I may not know a Ukrainian, help me get connected to do this. And the outpouring has been tremendous. I'd also like to say that the process of applying to be a sponsor through Uniting for Ukraine, we will be talking, Olga is the expert here and can walk us through many of it. But again, at ukraine.welcome.us, we've set up an FAQ. We've set up a primer on how to apply to be a sponsor. We've taken a lot of best practices of sponsorship and created very easy, digestible tools and resources to set sponsors up for success and to make sure that newcomers are welcomed into their new homes and communities as robustly as possible.
That's great. That's so succinct. In fact, it's probably a great summary of everything that we heard at the last webinar. A lot of people may not have heard of Welcome.us until this point. So for those of you who are already on the journey, we're going to get deeper into the weeds, but that was fantastic just to hear where we are at this point. So you, just to, before we move on, you said that this was announced in April. Do you have a rough estimate of how many people have already submitted applications?
Nearly 70,000. And what's extraordinary is normally, as many people who, some people might realize, it can take a long time for applications to be processed for admittance and entry into the US. People's applications are approved within a matter of days, and travel authorization happens within a matter of days. I did want to say right there that individuals apply. So an individual applies to the US government, to the Uniting for Ukraine program. Then a beneficiary, so a Ukrainian, applies. The US government, because it administers the program, does all of the vetting, all of the processing, all of the travel authorization. We are here to make sure that people are aware of this opportunity so that Ukrainians seeking refuge in the US can be welcomed, as we know we all want to help.
That's fantastic to hear. And I know personally of people across the country who've gone through the process. So I'm so glad to hear that the numbers are so high. But like you said, yes, people are getting responses within a matter of days, and that's fantastic.
And before we
Yeah,
move
go ahead.
on, I
Yeah.
just wanted to add very quickly, and this is my pitch. I'm a campaigner, I'm a mobilizer. The government has said the 100,000 is a threshold. So if more than 100,000 people file to be sponsors, the government will be responsive. And so that's why we should think big and bold and do what we do best, which is help people in need. And so we want to make sure that we hit at minimum 100,000 Americans apply to be sponsors.
Love it. Love the atmosphere. Love the energy. Thank you so much for the challenge. I hope we get to there sooner rather than later. But you did mention that we do have an expert, and that is Olga Khomyak, probably somebody on this webinar that's going to know more about the intricacies of this entire program, because she is an immigration lawyer, but not only that, she is an integral member of the Ukraine Strategic Task Force, Ukraine Immigration Task Force. So Olga, why don't you share a little bit about yourself?
Thank you so much, Andrij. Great introduction, great start, very active. So the Ukraine Immigration Task Force is a volunteer legal coalition that seeks to help Ukrainians fleeing war find refuge in the United States. At Ukraine Immigration Task Force, we concentrate mainly on advocacy, but we also connect attorneys of different specialties and work towards the goal of providing the correct information to the Ukrainians arriving to the United States on different programs, not only Uniting for Ukraine, but in different statuses. Our main goal is to concentrate on advocacy. There are a lot of issues connected with work authorizations, with changing of status, but that's what we mainly do.
Great. And you're in this because of your love for it, right?
I'm in this because I am Ukrainian, first of all, and I have a big family in Ukraine, and it touches me personally very much.
I think the wonderful thing about this program, it accepts people who have family there and people who just want to help out, like we heard from Denise earlier. So Uniting for Ukraine allows for entry to the US with the help of a sponsor. That's something we heard in the last segment. So who can be a sponsor, and does it have to be a family member?
Sure. So first of all, sponsors must hold a lawful status in the United States. On your screen, you can see legal statuses that are considered lawful and that would be viewed by USCIS as lawful status. But besides that, it's required of sponsor to be financially able and otherwise willing to receive beneficiary, to support beneficiary. One of the basic needs would be to help beneficiary arrive safely to the United States, to provide beneficiary with the provide with the safe housing, as well as maybe help complete the paperwork for work authorizations, help enroll children in schools. So there are certain things that are required, but obviously every sponsor can provide different type of help.
So if there are potential sponsors, and judging by the reception we got in the early questions when people registered, there are people who are interested on this webinar. What are some things that potential sponsors should think? What is the most important thing you think for potential sponsors to consider when they are deciding whether sponsorship is the right option for them?
Sure. So one of the first thing is to consider whether they will be able to support somebody who will be staying in the United States for up to 2 years, because we know that humanitarian parole is for a period of 2 years. It is not a permanent resettlement. It is a temporary resettlement. It's very important, crucial to mention. So the support will be for a period of only up to 2 years. Sponsors are not responsible for beneficiaries breaking the law. Obviously, you cannot. There are a lot of people who get in touch with me who are concerned about that. So beneficiaries should be understanding, of course, that they are coming to the United States. This country has its own laws, and they should live and abide by those laws. Sponsors are doing a great job providing their financial information to the USCIS to be able to bring Ukrainians to the United States. But again, it is temporary for a period of up to 2 years, and they should consider seriously if they can do it or have the possibility of doing it for that period of time. I'm sorry, Andrij, I think you muted yourself.
I was coughing too much, sorry. Okay, so there are sponsors on here. You told them the most important thing for them to consider beforehand, but can you just very briefly walk us through what this application process would be?
Sure. So the first step would be to connect the sponsor and the beneficiary. Sponsors should fill out, complete their profile on a Welcome Connect website. After that, they should, once they are connected with a beneficiary, they should collect relevant information and documents about the beneficiary. After that, submit Form I-134, that is a financial declaration. This declaration will be reviewed by USCIS. What is considered, whether sponsor has enough financial, enough money to support a beneficiary, or whether they have any criminal record. It is very important also to the US government to make sure that people are arriving and sponsors don't have any of, criminal background. And they also are able to track their application status. After that, they receive, both the sponsor and the beneficiary receive an email. The email with the letter that says your application is sufficient or your application is determined insufficient. Once it is insufficient, sponsor can reapply, or there can be a different sponsor that would be matched with the beneficiary. I'm not sure if it is done as part of the Welcome.Ukraine and Welcome Connect, but they can reapply and provide information again. Or another outcome can happen and application will be determined sufficient. Once it is determined sufficient, beneficiary receives an email with the further steps. They should create an account on USCIS website and confirm their background information, their vaccination information, and confirm minor attestation. Once that is confirmed, they submit all of that information to CBP. And at that point, CBP, Customs and Border Protection, reviews the information on beneficiaries. After a couple of days, travel authorization is either granted or denied by CBP. Once it is granted, a beneficiary will have up to 90 days to travel to the United States. They have to arrange for their own travel. Once they arrive to the United States, CBP officers will be reviewing their application and granting them humanitarian parole. So the document that they will be receiving, travel document, is not a visa, it is not a humanitarian parole yet. It is important that once they are in the United States to complete a TB screening within the next 2 weeks, or their parole can be terminated because they didn't complete everything. A lot of people forget to complete that step. And after that, it is important to apply for work authorization and get their social security number.
Wow, that's a lot. But it's great that we're putting this all together. If you are just joining us a little late, you may have missed that the fact that all the webinars that Welcome.us is doing, like this one, this is the third one, are on the Welcome.us website, YouTube. So if you miss something and you think one of these slides is very important for you, a potential sponsor, or a potential beneficiary to see, you'll be able to go back later. And again, I'm going to remind you, if you have any questions, go ahead and plop them into the Q&A. Olga just put a lot of information out there, but I think, frankly, she answered most of the questions I was going to ask in advance. So Olga is a phenomenal professional. And we've heard from Denise about potential time periods. We've heard from Olga what the process is, approximately how long people have to get into the country afterwards. Now we're going to get into the nuts and bolts on the Welcome.us side because of this wonderful Welcome Connect project that we've heard already throughout this webinar. So Rachel, we're going to bring you on here. Rachel is the Vice President of Operations and Strategy at Welcome.us. And I'm going to ask you to tell us a little bit more about Welcome Connect.
Yeah, I'm so excited to share about Welcome Connect, especially since a lot of you in the Q&A are asking about, if you're interested in sponsoring, if you're interested in finding a Ukrainian in need, how do you do that? And the answer is Welcome Connect. So I'm just going to do a little bit of a demo of how Welcome Connect works, and then of course eager to answer questions about that. Let me just share my screen. Pardon me. So I'll give you quickly just a view of what is available now. So if you go to connect.welcome.us, it will direct you to this page. All of our content is available in Ukrainian as well as English, and we're working on adding Russian in the near future. I'm just going to walk you through the way that it works. So if you go down here, you can see because of the huge interest from Ukrainians, we have more than 5,000 families already registered looking for an American sponsor. So registration is now closed for additional Ukrainians to register, but as soon as we have sufficient sponsors on the portal, we'll reopen that. If you are a sponsor, the way that you connect is first you'll click on this Become a Sponsor page that will bring you to the Welcome Connect portal. This page is the registration for you to create an account. Again, everything is available. I'll just do the quick toggle in Ukrainian and in English. So what you'll do here is input just some basic information to create an account. There's a series of verification steps here. So you'll make sure you'll verify your email, you'll verify creating a password, and that's all steps to just make sure that these are real people, not robots, creating accounts. And then once you have all of that, you will log in on to Welcome Connect. And so I'm going to just walk you through what that looks like. So the first page that you'll see is just an overview of what the process is like, just to kind of walk you through. And then the first step, sorry, I've done a few of these steps. So you'll see the first step is to create an online training, to go through an online training. So a little bit of what folks were asking in the chat would also be answered here. So there's some great information about what is sponsorship, what are the expectations for sponsors, and then even how to be a good sponsor. And with Deb on the line, I'll also say that these modules were all developed in partnership with Community Sponsorship Hub and are really based on best practices from along many years of community sponsorship. So for each of these, you would click Get Started, and you would be able to run through a interactive training. The really sort of bite-sized pieces gives you a really great view of what this looks like. And then after you click through that, you'll see this little red dot that says that you've completed it. And once you have completed all of them, which I'll show you now, you'll be able to mark the training completed. And then the final step is to create a profile. So you can see here, there's some information. You can upload a photo. You can answer some questions about what kinds of people you are looking to sponsor, how many people you can support, what kind of housing you might be offering, what kind of support you're planning to provide, what languages you speak, these kinds of things, and then information about yourself and your community. You'll notice also here that it gives you an option of indicating if you're sponsoring with a group or affiliated with an organization. And then that will allow you to be put into the pool of available sponsors. So the next part that I'll show you is really a preview of what the next part is. So a few people asked in the chat when matching would be open. And the answer is we're hoping that we'll be able to open matching, and by matching I really mean connecting, at the end of next week. And so I'm going to give you all a real preview of what that is expected to look like. So just bear with me for 1 second. There it is. So what you'll see here are these are just the design screens for the portal. I'm involved in developing it. So what a beneficiary will see is a list of available sponsors based on some of their criteria. So they'll see sponsors who are willing to sponsor a group of the size that they've indicated, potentially, and they can filter by state preference, potentially gender, and you'll be able to see available sponsors. A beneficiary will be able to click into a profile, and then it will be able to click a request to connect with a particular sponsor, send a message to that sponsor, and then, pardon me for the thing here, and then we'll be able to send messages back and forth to really determine if it's a good match with the sponsor. The beneficiary is the one that will reach out to a sponsor, and the sponsor will only be able to see the profile of that beneficiary once they've reached out. So really giving some of the agency to beneficiaries who are in a vulnerable situation. And then it is the sponsor who can offer sponsorship to a particular beneficiary. And that is an offer that can be accepted or declined by that beneficiary. And then once that pair is matched, there is a series of screens that I will show you to indicate just some of the key resources that are available and what the next steps are to move off of the platform of Welcome Connect and on to the process of submitting the I-134. So that was a lot very quickly, and I hope that gives you a picture of what Welcome Connect will be in the coming days.
It's amazing. Not only have we heard earlier that the government is going to be doing all this vetting, but just this interface, you know, I have to say it's way more than I knew about my college roommate. It's probably, you know, I see the reporting procedure. People can say if they're not comfortable. It's all based on the perspective of those most vulnerable. So congratulations on a wonderful setup. And I hope if we have people asking specific questions, maybe we'll have time to talk about that interface because it looks amazing so far. So congratulations.
Thank you so much. Really excited about it.
All right, we have our final speaker before we get to the questions, but a very important one nonetheless. We're going to move on to Deb. Deb Stein is the Senior Liaison for Strategic Partnerships of the Community Sponsorship Hub. Deb, community sponsorship is unique for everyday Americans for them to play a role in welcoming newcomers into their communities. So the Community Sponsorship Hub, which we're going to talk about with the support of other partners, created this Sponsor Circle program, an innovative community sponsorship model that allows organizations or groups of 5 or more to sponsor Ukrainian newcomers through the United for Ukraine process. Can you please tell us about this Sponsor Circle program first and foremost? What is this process? What is the process for starting a Sponsor Circle?
Thank you, Andrij. And first, let me say I'm just very pleased to be able to join folks today and to be here with our partners and colleagues from welcome.us. I think if we could just take a quick step back, I want to say a word about the Community Sponsorship Hub, which was launched in September 2021 to support the expansion and enhancement of community sponsorship programs. And our missions to grow the roles of communities in the protection, resettlement, and integration of refugees and other forcibly displaced people. Mobilizing civil society and public, private, and philanthropic sectors and empowering them with the resources and access that they need. And we look to shape and coordinate a community sponsorship system that can leverage the power of welcoming Americans, such as those of you on the call today. So we do this by coordinating with a group of actors like welcome.us and the Ukrainian Immigration Task Force to build capacity. So just sort of quickly about community sponsorship, the US has a very long and rich history of everyday Americans supporting newcomers. And it enables Americans to directly and meaningfully support newcomers as they relocate and rebuild their lives in our neighborhoods. So just to talk a little bit about the Sponsor Circle program, which, as Andrij said, is an innovative program and a form of community sponsorship, which centers on communities itself as the heart of welcoming newcomers to the US. What began as a response to welcoming Afghans has now expanded to include new programming to welcome Ukrainians. We know that the responsibility for welcoming is both very serious but very rewarding. And sponsors are taking on tasks like finding initial housing, stocking a pantry, connecting children to school, providing initial income support, helping adults to find employment, among a variety of other things. My apologies, my Alexa is going off in the background. Should temporarily mute, real life. So I noticed that there were quite a few questions in the chat. Folks were asking about, you know, I'm an individual, but I'd like to work with a group of people to welcome. And so this is where the Sponsor Circle program comes in. And one of the things that I want to mention, and is an important distinction here, that individuals or groups don't need to be a sponsor circle or start a sponsor circle to be able to apply through Uniting for Ukraine. But in order to be a sponsor circle, we do ask that you be in the process of or have completed that the I-134 process. So it is a distinction with a difference, as they say, to paraphrase. Sponsor circles, once they submit an application, will be provided with support and guidance for the first 6 months of the sponsorship. So as Olga mentioned before, applying through U4U is a 2-year commitment, and by participating in the Sponsor Circle program, you'll have access to several supports and resources throughout the first 6 months. So how do we start the process to become a sponsor circle? You can start by going to our website, which is sponsorcircles.org, where you'll find many resources, including an option to register for application support sessions, which will provide an opportunity to learn more in depth about the Sponsor Circle program, as well as to ask questions in a much smaller setting than perhaps we have today. These sessions are held every Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, and you can find more information about that on the sponsorcircles.org website. So to start the application, you need to find a group of 5 or more friends, colleagues, or other interested individuals, or you could be an organization, to come together to form a sponsor circle. And many have asked in the comments about how to find other individuals. The application support sessions are really kind of a great way for folks to potentially find others in their community. That question comes up there a lot as well. And so there's folks that are looking to find other like-minded folks in their community. Group members have to be 18 years of age or older. At least one member of the group needs to complete a required course on the Sponsor Circle program. Each member of the circle has to complete a required background check. You can also use Welcome Connect, which we strongly suggest to be matched with a newcomer. You'll also want to look at assigning roles to members of your sponsor circle to distribute the workload of being a sponsor. So having somebody lead in finance, having somebody lead in finding employment, housing and basic necessities, and so on. You'll want to start to create a budget and potentially fundraise to be able to support the family that you'll be sponsoring. And finally, you'll create a welcome plan that can help walk you through all of these steps and goes into much more detail about how to prepare for sponsorship. Once you submit your application, you'll then be paired with a Sponsor Circle umbrella organization, who are organizations that partner with Community Sponsorship Hub and the Sponsor Circle program to help support and mentor your group throughout the first 6 months of sponsorship. And as you'll see on both the welcome.us website and on the Sponsor Circle's website, there are a number of resources available to you as you prepare to welcome and to help you be successful in that sponsorship. As I think was mentioned before, all of these resources were developed in partnership with welcome.us, and they really are available to support anybody who's welcoming a newcomer. And I think you'll see on the slide, here's just a sampling of the information that is available already on the website that folks can take a look at. One of the main benefits of being a sponsor circle is that connection to a sponsor circle umbrella organization. You'll have an individual person that you can go to ask your questions, to provide guidance, and to get into more detail about all of these items and many more.
Fantastic.
That was my speedy version.
No, it was good because you also took a second just to remind us what the community sponsorship hub is all about to begin with. So I'm grateful that you did that. And now, if you can clarify, I'll just have a quick question to you. So you said that you can start your community sponsorship circle, but after you've submitted your I-134 form. Does that mean you submit the form, or do you hear back from people and you're already accepted? Which comes first?
So, I mean, there's no specific hard and fast rule. We suggest that you get that process started. You could really do them concurrently, to be quite honest. And again, this is something that the applicant support sessions will go into more detail about. But it's also possible that for Ukrainians that may already have arrived and don't have the benefit of a sponsor, but have been attached to a group locally, and that group might not be familiar with what resources are available, it's also an option for groups like that to become a sponsor circle and to get those safe supports. Fantastic. Why don't we jump into some of these many questions that keep on coming in. I see them scrolling up as we speak. The last slide you showed, you did mention all the facts that are already on the website. And as we heard from Rachel before, and Denise, can you just verify that that information is already bilingual, and at some point it will be trilingual as well? I get a thumbs up on that. All right, Olia, we're going to go into some detailed questions because I think you see that a lot of these are specific questions. So we're going to try to apply them to a broad potential audience as possible. I did hear from you at the very beginning. You specifically mentioned how long it takes for the I-134 process to go through, but can you just verify for people how long approximately should they expect that process to take?
Sure. If everything is submitted correctly, Andrij, it should take from 5 days to 2 weeks on tops to complete the full process, to submit application I-134, have it checked by the USCIS, confirmed, and then submit information on beneficiary and get the travel authorization. But in some cases where people submit the information incorrectly or possibly not complete, it takes longer.
Okay, and I believe that information is in the fact, so it's very upfront about how long this could take. Also probably upfront is the next question that I'm seeing, that is it possible after the expiration of the United for Ukraine program for 2 years, could it be possible to extend the stay further, or is that a condition of this program? Can you clarify that?
Uniting for Ukraine program and humanitarian parole is up to 2 years. So it's a temporary program, and unless it is extended, or there is a different way of adjusting. So there's an adjustment act of some sort that people can change their status, or based on their individual cases. It's hard to answer that question right now, but there are other options that people can consider. However, after 2 years, they are supposed to leave. The program is only for 2 years.
Okay. Well, while they're here for the 2 years, we have a couple of questions about employment. First of all, do people who go through this program and get accepted and come here, will they have the right to work? Because this one question says that most want to be able to provide, obviously, for themselves during this program. But there's a related question about that that you can answer at the same time, which is some people are hearing that work authorization can take up to 9 months to be approved. So let's talk about work authorization.
Sure. So yes, when they are arriving on humanitarian parole, they don't get work authorization incidental to status. What that means, just by entering and having humanitarian parole, they cannot start working. They have to apply and submit form I-765. It will be reviewed by USCIS, and once approved, they will get the card that will be their work authorization together with a social security card. However, it does take some time to get those work authorizations. We have encountered that issue as immigration attorneys. We're trying to work on speeding it up. However, USCIS is a service that takes a long time to review documents because they have a lot of work. So that is understandable.
And there are lots of other countries with people applying for work, I'm sure. So let's see. We have a question about sponsoring a family. So this is quite specific, but let's make it broader. In this specific example, this question is about somebody from this family not having his passport documents, but the wife, sorry, the husband has it, the wife does not. How do they get the documents? That could be a range of people within a family unit. What do you know about that?
Unfortunately, passport is required for travel because you provided, that information is provided by the sponsor in the I-134, and it has to absolutely match the passport. So the series and the number of the passport has to match the series and the number entered that appears in the travel authorization. Unfortunately, they cannot come without the passport. I believe in Ukraine, there is expedited processing of obtaining a passport. I don't know if it works currently under the circumstances.
Very understandable. Very straightforward question that probably has to do with boundaries here. Can you host a family in your direct house, or does the sponsor need to pay for a residence like an apartment for that person?
I could take that one unless
Thanks,
Deb,
Rachel.
you want to take it. Sure. Really, I think the best practice is that we don't actually encourage folks to host a family in their home, because you're trying to help a family get on their own feet and really, build a life. But there is no, formal limitation. So you are able to host them in your own home if you choose to. But best practice would be to find their own place for them to live.
And as your wonderful presentation showed, the beneficiary would see and know well in advance. This is not a surprise. They're showing up and, hey, you're living with me. This will be something discussed in advance. So that's wonderful. I have a question that I have heard personally from people regarding this triplicate proof of assets. In this example, it says, if you were applying to sponsor a family, a mother, a father, and a 10-month-old baby, do you need triplicate proof of assets for each person? Who wants to take that one? Olga or?
I can take it. I just want to clarify, we're talking about the sponsor's assets or about the beneficiary's assets, because in the I-134, there are two separate, I would say, two separate parts of the I-134 that is specifying it. If we're talking about sponsor's assets, sponsor needs to provide information about any assets he or she has. So it can be a checking savings account. It can be a deed to a house, a title to I believe the requirement is for the second car, so you don't include your first car, any stocks or bonds or retirement accounts. However, if sponsor does not want to show that information, they can provide an employment letter, they can provide their income tax return for the previous year, and their bank officer statement. That should be the limit that they have to provide. If we're talking about the beneficiary, if they have any assets, if they have any income, that information should also be provided in I-134.
That's very straightforward, and things that I had not known, because me, a layman looking at this I-134, I don't think I could get that information. So thank you very much, Olga. I have a question that kind of maybe relates to the community sponsorship hub, and that has to do with somebody who's interested in sponsorship, but would like to talk to somebody, ideally in their own city, this person's in Washington, D.C., about what the experience was like. Who wants to grab that one? Deb?
Sure. So again, I recommend the applicant support sessions, which again is an opportunity to potentially meet people who may be from your area who can speak about that. It quite frankly may be a little bit harder to find people who have already sponsored to ask them, because we don't necessarily, for privacy reasons, we wouldn't necessarily be sharing information. But it's possible that the sponsor circle umbrella organization that you would be matched with if you become a sponsor circle, that they may have other groups they work with in your area that they might be able to refer you to.
And again, relating to what you said earlier, it's best to put in the application first, and then you can get part of that sponsor circle program and have that interaction. So at least make the commitment to fill out the form, and then you'll get that huge range of access to all these resources, including individual people you can talk to, right?
That's correct. And it's not, there's, filling out the application to be a sponsor circle is not necessarily committing you to anything. If this is really an opportunity and a resource for potential sponsor circles to receive additional supports. So it really is a good idea if you're serious about sponsorship and want to do it in a group setting, if you will, to get that application started so we can match you with an umbrella organization.
Wonderful. How about a practical thing? This has to do with once you're here, you've gotten through the process, you've been matched. What are the possibilities for leaving the country, say, to go back and visit a family member? We know that men within a certain age period aren't allowed to leave Ukraine because of conscription right now. So if, say, a wife wanted to visit her spouse, is that something that's allowed under this program? Olga, maybe?
Sure. They are encouraged not to leave the United States during the 2-year period. However, I understand that emergencies happen, and before leaving the United States, a beneficiary will have to apply for advanced parole. That is, they will have to complete Form I-131 before they depart the United States. If they need that document fast, they need to indicate to the USCIS that it has to be expedited and the reason for the expedited request. They have to submit some paperwork as a proof of that reason. However, I don't encourage leaving because there is no guarantee that they will be allowed back in on humanitarian parole, even with the advanced parole.
Wow. Okay, that's good to know in advance for people, because that'll make a family decision for them. I also have a bunch of questions here regarding the whole Welcome Connect process, Rachel. So some of them are like, I guess it's like an Uber thing. Can I request a specific driver? So if I know somebody who's a friend and I'm applying as a beneficiary, can I request that specific person, or do I need to find that person throughout Welcome Connect? And in general, can you talk a little bit more? I have a lot of questions about, how do I find somebody? And it's all through the Welcome Connect page that's going to be up, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Welcome Connect page, the real purpose of the page is for potential sponsors and Ukrainians looking for a sponsor to find one another. So that being said, if you already have a friend in mind on either side, there actually is not a reason that you would need to use Welcome Connect, and instead should check out ukraine.welcome.us, where there's lots of resources, and you can kind of skip ahead to the step where you fill out the I-134. The Welcome Connect platform is really for that use case where folks need to find one another.
Great. I think probably some people may have gone down the rabbit hole without knowing that. So that's fantastic that you mentioned that. And again, all this information is going to be on those facts, and it's available in multiple languages on welcome.us. We have a little bit more time. We have an enormous amount of questions, but as we get through here, we have another one here. This sounds a little legalese. So do I need written permission from the father to take my 10-month daughter from Ukraine? So this is, again, a situation where the male member of the family can't leave Ukraine. What is the requirement legally?
Sure. I don't recommend bringing the child, bringing to the United States without the father's permission. However, in case these permissions are needed for the Ukrainian officers, right, the border patrol. So if people find themselves in Europe, they don't have to get the written permission of the father to travel to the United States. However, if they are still in Ukraine, I believe for some time it was not required to get it, but I do encourage for mothers to get that permission before leaving.
Okay. Now, there is a question here, sorry, just too many of them, regarding getting the permission over here. How long, this is about the work situation. How long a process is that? I think we said it's a long process, but how long can you expect to then continue working? Is that indefinite through the rest of your stay? Will he or she have to reapply for work authorization?
I believe it will be given for the period of the parole.
Okay.
We haven't seen them yet. I haven't seen them actually. So I believe they should be for the period of the parole.
Okay. All right. At the beginning, we talked about some reasons why people get authorization quickly or not. What are reasons? And then I believe, Olga, you said that you can reapply if you got denied. Maybe it's a financial reason, or maybe there's a reason that takes you off the list going forward. Can you talk about some of the reasons why somebody wouldn't be qualified for this program?
Okay, so there are different stages at which you can be denied. It's a stage of a sponsor where a sponsor doesn't have sufficient resources, financial resources to support, or there's some sort of background check that, you know, came back positive for a sponsor. At that point, it would, or documents were not provided, right? Or there's some sort of mistake. So it's different at every stage. With respect to beneficiary, travel authorization might be denied if beneficiary had any issues before with breaking immigration law in the United States, like staying in the US on B1, B2 visa, working, and then overstaying the visa, going back to Ukraine. I have seen those travel authorizations being denied as well. And once travel authorization is issued and beneficiaries are already in the United States, humanitarian parole is given here. So if they do not qualify for the program, or nowhere in the application it asks you if you have resided in the United States, in Ukraine as of February 11th. That is a requirement that people have to be residing. Ukrainians have to be residing in Ukraine, and if they haven't and they apply, that can be a reason for denial of the humanitarian parole in the United States, although travel authorization was issued.
Complicated, but again, you make it sound so simple. So, at least A to B, I understand what you're saying. I may not be able to fill out a form myself, but that's why we have great people helping out if necessary. I have a question here. We talked earlier, and maybe this relates to sponsorship circles, but it was the discussion about people sponsoring, but also organizations. So there's a question specifically about a church. Looking forward to learning how a church can get involved to sponsor an individual or a family. Who can take that?
Sure. So I'm sorry, Deb.
Deb.
I was sure. Well, I was just going to say that Olga can probably respond as it pertains to filing the I-134. But in terms of becoming a sponsor circle, certainly faith communities or small community groups, what have you, that we would welcome them as sponsor circles.
Olga, now, is there anything about, there's a related question about can a sponsor, in addition to applying, showing your taxes, is there anything against that sponsor then doing a fundraiser and finding local funding to help out during this process? Is that frowned upon? Is that something that would be part of the process?
I just wanted to mention that a group is encouraged to apply to be sponsors. However, there has to be a main sponsor who will be filling out I-134. And then each of the additional sponsors would be providing certain information about themselves. So if that additional sponsor wants to contribute with funds, they would probably attach their bank account statements, they would attach their income tax return. And at the end, in the additional information part, you will indicate that there are additional sponsors who would want to sponsor and what exactly they will be doing. But I'm not sure about the fundraisers and
But it sounds like starting an account online, there has to be one person, and by one entity, and by that you mean somebody with a social security number. That is the main person. It's not an organization that's the main, but one person can represent that organization, correct?
Right. There has to be a representative who will be filling out the form on behalf of the organization.
Okay. Can somebody discuss a little bit about liabilities? So we've talked about financial. How responsible are people as sponsors for the people coming over? If they get in trouble for any reason, what is the sponsor's responsibility?
It's a very good question, Andrij, but at this point, we don't know how much sponsors will be responsible. And what I mean by that, obviously, they will not be responsible by, as I mentioned before, for certain things that beneficiaries do. If they overstay their stay in the United States and violate immigration law, sponsors will not be responsible for that. If they apply for certain benefits that they are not entitled to or indicate fraudulent information on those applications, sponsors will not be responsible for that. So yes, they are helping by bringing Ukrainian beneficiaries to the United States, but those Ukrainian beneficiaries will have a life of their own to live. As in any country, they cannot violate laws. They have to abide by them. They can get their work authorization. They can work. They can provide themselves with housing. They can get driver's licenses, and they can live a normal life. So, and they will be responsible for their actions, as in any other country in the world.
That's very straightforward. There's a commitment made by the sponsor. If anything is from the beneficiary side, I'm sure it works both ways also. I'm sure the beneficiary, if the sponsor forgets to pay their cable bill, I'm sure we're not looking at the beneficiary either. So it's a very good partnership. It's a wonderful process here. We're seeing from the screenshots and the screen sharing that we saw, how people get to interact to find the right people. Let's just go back as a just boilerplate for people who aren't maybe joining us very, very late. Approximately how long is this a humanitarian parole process, and how long with a sponsor applying for being a sponsor, how long are they expected to sponsor that person?
So the humanitarian parole is for a period of up to 2 years, and the sponsors would be so-called responsible for a period of up to 2 years. The process of applying for the travel authorization would be somewhere from 5 days to 2 weeks if everything is submitted correctly.
Okay. That's plain and simple. We also heard the numbers at the beginning. We saw that this was announced in April, and there are already tens of thousands who have gone through the process of signing up. But in addition to that, we know that, I believe, Denise, you were saying that the 100,000 that was announced is the threshold, right? We're looking for attaining that and perhaps going beyond, correct?
Absolutely. That's a great way of putting it. That is our threshold. That is our goal. And we want to far exceed that goal. And the administration, if they see thousands more Americans raising their hands and signing up to sponsor, we are hopeful that the government will continue to admit Ukrainians through Uniting for Ukraine as it's indicated it would consider. So the greatest way, the greatest persuasion is to have a lot of people sign up.
And as part of that is for people who are interested to, share this information. So we've mentioned the website several times, but it's a very simple one for welcome.us, because that's frankly all it is, welcome.us. And if you're looking at the Ukraine program, you just add ukraine.welcome.us. All of these materials are there online. If you want more information about the sponsorship circles, it's sponsorcircles.org. You'll find more information as Deb described there. And it's not just on those websites, but Welcome.us has a very active social media campaign. I know I've printed up several of those great pictures and graphics, and I've distributed them myself, but I also see them organically popping up in churches and community halls. People are sharing this, but if the people watching want to do more, not just signing up themselves, share the word by sharing things online and go visiting yourself. I think that's a great way to get the message out. Denise has challenged us, so that is official. That's on the record. So
Denise has challenged you.
That's great. I think we're just at the hour mark. So I think I'm going to be thanking everybody for this incredible time that we've had together. Thank you for all the questions. For those of you who, again, this may be your first time, or maybe you're joining us again, Welcome.us will be continuing with this series of webinars, because sometimes seeing a face and a person explain things like Olga did, like Deb, Denise, Rachel, sometimes that's the best way to communicate some of our answers. And a lot of the questions that you heard today were submitted today. A lot of them, we have an ongoing list from previous webinars. So the more we can emphasize and answer questions that keep getting asked, I think the better we'll be getting about getting the word about this program, people trusting this program. As we heard Denise mention at the very beginning, you have a wonderful a bunch of people who came together as partner organizations, wonderful honorary chairs for this organization. So that's why I know that the Ukrainian Congress Committee is a proud partner of this. We've been sending out information from the very beginning, but we'd like for everybody else to share this information as well. If you know somebody who could benefit from seeing this video, it will be on the Welcome.us YouTube page, as the other webinars are. You can go back, all the slides that were prepared, Olga's very intricate slides, some of the screenshots from Welcome Connect that's still not live, but you saw the early previews of that. You can see those screenshots on this video, and that will be on the Welcome.us YouTube page. With that, I'd just like to thank everybody who took part in this. I'd like to thank Welcome.us and the wonderful organizers. Erica, thank you for all your work behind the scenes. Melissa as well. And again, thank you to our speakers, Olga, Deb, Denise, and Rachel. Couldn't do it without you. Very grateful, and keep on connecting online. We look forward to seeing you there, guys.